Welcome to Shore Talk. Shore Talk is designed to keep you better informed of what's going on here on Virginia's beautiful Eastern Shore. Now, here's Shore Talk.
Time now is 12:33 p.m. and joining me on Shore Talk today, we're joined by the three heads of emergency services and emergency planning here on Virginia's Eastern Shore from Accomack County, Mr. C. Ray Pruitt from Chincoteague Island, Bryan Rush, and Hollye Carpenter from Northampton. Welcome, lady and gentlemen. How y'all doing this afternoon?
Doing very well.
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here today. So we are now in hurricane season. That began on June the 1st. So what is the biggest things that people need to be doing right now? No storms that are named right now, nothing threatening. So what do folks need to be doing right now at this moment to try to ensure as much as possible that there won't be any problems this hurricane season?
Preparedness is what we're asking folks to do now. You need to be well aware of what can happen here on the Eastern Shore, from nor'easters to hurricanes, and you need to start planning to get emergency kits together. So if you were to lose power, maybe not have any food or water for a few days if you're operating off of a well, we ask everybody to have 3 to 5 days worth of water, non-perishable food. Certainly if you take medications, try to get those filled a few days ahead of time, because if we were to ever have a direct strike here on the shore, it could be days or weeks before those services were ever up and operating again.
Mm-hmm. Also with that, I echo what Bryan saying about preparedness. Also with that, please monitor, the weather. And I know I can speak for all three of us here today. Thank WSR for many years of assistant emergency man with broadcasting, whether it's storm information, shelter location, and so forth. So, echo the same thing as Bryan. The preparedness is the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to consider is evacuation. Are you going to be able to evacuate? Do you want to evacuate? We've had a lot of complacency. We haven't had a whole lot of storms. It's been a while since we even activated our emergency operations center for hurricane. So those plans in advance of where you would go if you needed to evacuate are really important.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you mentioned right there, what you're going to do. So if somebody, for example, we'll just say a regular tropical storm, perhaps hurricanes heading towards the Eastern Shore, and somebody has decided, well, I'm going to stay. What are the things that they need to be keeping in mind as they prepare to stay and ride out that storm? I know you had mentioned the 3 to 5 days of supply of water and medications and food. What else do they need to be thinking of?
Well, I think, always prepare for the storm and monitor the weather, but also look at where you live. As we all both know, all three know on the Eastern Shore, you have the bay and the seaside communities, and some of those are flood prone, even we have a significant rain event. So, look at where you live, monitor the tide, the winds, and so forth, and be prepared that in the event that we had high flooding or down trees, some of these, we would call it Eastern Shore outland, like line neck roads, we call them. There may be days late power, there may be times you can't get out. So I think the biggest thing is to monitor, be aware where you live for flooding prone areas, and in the event also trees are down and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Also with where you live, realize that if you can't get out, we can't get in. So help is going to be difficult to get in the time of an emergency for access to those areas.
Yeah. Good. You have something to say, Bryan?
I just want to add that for folks in the Chincoteague area, you need to be well prepared for the causeway to close many hours before a storm ever arrives. It's becoming more of a problem in the last few years. The causeway closes more and more. And a lot of people think, well, the weatherman's telling me the storm won't arrive until 6 o'clock tonight. That causeway could be closed 6 o'clock the night before. So Don't wait until the last minute to make your decision of whether you're going to stay or go. And if any of the three of us ask you to go, please go.
Now, what are is the protocol for closing the causeway? Is it wind? Is it, water above mean low level?
VDOT actually makes that decision. They're in charge of actually closing the causeway, but we have a plan in place so that we all communicate as to when this might occur. They try to give us an hour's notice before they actually do it. Any of the data that we've had so far, mean low water at 4.9, anything above 4.9 mean low or low water has in the past closed the causeway. Now, some of that is wind dependent, so it could drive. It's also dependent on the direction of the wind. So, we try to use a base of 4.9 mean low or low water. But again, That could be 4.8 if we had a really strong easterly or northeasterly. Could be 5.3 if we had a northerly. So, again, you don't want to wait to the last minute to make those kind of decisions in a big event.
And also, real quick, I'll jump in. Think about the Chincoteague causeway, and the Bayside, we think about the Saxes. And basically, same Bryan saying, we know mean low water about 5 foot. We've seen flooding, depending upon the weather. But also to note is we do have tide gauges in Accomack County and Northampton County. We have a tide gauge located at the Saxes Harbor, Chincoteague Harbor, and Hollye.
Bayford and Oyster and Chincoteague.
So we do have the ability to monitor water rise and, of course, information we receive from the Weather Service.
So one thing I know that you guys have been talking a lot about, and is the big push now, is that these evacuations have now gone to what's referred to as knowing your zone. Maybe talk a little bit, someone can explain kind of the overview of what the Know Your Zone program, how it's designed, why it's designed, and then maybe we can start to talk about the various different zones so folks will know, hey, it's time for me to get out of here.
Well, Know Your Zone actually was a state, initiative that came out and it looked at, on the shore right now. If we say evacuate, depending on the severity of the storm, we could have a nor'easter just going to impact the Chincoteague, Washpega area. Do we need to evacuate the entire shore? No. Same thing in Northampton County. So they came out with Know Your Zone. So what they done was, in both localities, or all three localities, have booklets or pamphlets. It's called Know Your Zone. And it's color coded in 4 colors: blue, green, a yellow color, and also a pinkish color. So what it does is, if we know that we're going to have a nor'easter that's going to impact the seaside community, Chincoteague down to Washpega, we could actually say, please be aware of those people in Chincoteague and the Washpega and the blue zone seaside community. We're asking you to evacuate. Or if it's a large scale event, we could ask you the entire shore. So it basically breaks it down to, do we really need to evacuate the entire shore all the time, or just our low-lying communities?
So could you have like a seaside only zone 1 or zone A evacuation?
Well, yes, we've seen that. Actually, you look at it, I believe last winter we had the nor'easters that impact our outlying areas. We could actually say, in the Bayside and also in the seaside areas, that if you're in these certain zones, that we only need you to evacuate. To a large scale event, as I said before, that the entire shore is evacuated.
All right, so tell me a little bit about where these zones break down and begin. I know you said there's the low-lying areas for Zone A, but what about B, C, and D?
If you look at our maps we have on, it basically, the spine of the shore, we all know Rankin Highway, the railroad tracks, is basically the center of the shore, and that's Zone D. That would be, I would see, as a large, a rather significant storm. The blue colors are basically our outlying communities of the Bayside and seaside areas, Chincoteague and so forth. And then you have the green, which goes down to the spine, which I call down to, the Bayside communities, the Hallwood, blocks, and parts area. So it all goes by data, like Bryan was saying, and how I said before, data we collect about storm surge, wind direction, and so forth. We collect that information, compare it with VDEMs at the state, and then they would give us an assessment, and we as local emergency managers would say, okay, we feel by the information we've seen is we're going to evacuate these certain areas.
Now, where are folks supposed to evacuate if they're going to be leaving the area?
You want to start in Hollye?
Typically, we send north, because you look at the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and Tunnel to the south, which is the only means of access to the Tidewater area, and the numbers of people that are there. So if you're going to plan to head in that direction, you need to leave really, really early, and we're talking days, 3 to 5 days at least ahead of a storm.
That's if you're going to head south.
If you're going to head south. So typically going north is a better option. Going west, however, during the summertime, you end up with your bottlenecks up in Ocean City, Baltimore area, Wilmington, all in there. So it's consideration for that and what their particular evacuation plans may be at the time and what the direct impact of the storm is.
Okay. So what if somebody is ready to evacuate, but they want to go to a shelter? Maybe we should talk about the different shelters that are available for each locality.
For Northampton County, during a hurricane-type event or a wind-related event, we do not have any shelters that we can open, like a government, public-owned building that are capable of safely housing people. We have an agreement with Accomack County to utilize their shelter at Nandua Middle School, where we'll provide our social services staff for the shelter to be able to send our people from Northampton County up there that wish to go to a shelter. They are able to go to any shelter in Accomack County, but that is the one that we're primarily providing staff for in lieu of our inability to.
Okay. Bryan, what do folks do on Chincoteague?
Well, on Chincoteague, of course, we're in a zone, so anytime there's an event, we're going to be, first on the map to do anything. There are currently, and probably never will be, any shelters on Chincoteague because we are in that flood zone. And most of the time when you evacuate for water and not for wind. That's been the plan. So, of course, on Chincoteague, it wouldn't be a good idea to try to stay somewhere because the tide could rise. And for those that are old enough to remember the 1962 flood during Ash Wednesday, which, again, was a March storm, not even during our hurricane season, significant flooding on Chincoteague. So our folks, when we do have an evacuation notice or someone decides that, hey, I want to get out of the area just because I'm, not confident to stay here, our folks would go to either Arcadia Middle School or Arcadia High School, whatever Sea Ray sets up through the county for that particular event, and our folks would go there. We do have the capability for those that don't have any transportation on the island. In other words, they may be a household without any vehicles. We can make arrangements to get them to a pickup point with our trolley service and actually get them over to the shelter. What we encourage folks to do, however, is go to someone that's out of the area. Go away from the area because, again, if we were to have a major impact, regardless if you're in a shelter or you're still at home sheltering in a place of last resort, we may not be able to, get to you or get the supplies that you're going to need. Air conditioning may be down. So, again, if you can get out of the area, that's what we highly recommend to do is to get out of the area.
Mm-hmm.
And just as Bryan was saying, Accomack County, our primary shelters are the high schools, Arcadia High, Nando High, and then we fall out if we get more and more people to the shelters with our middle schools. The thing to think about, and all three will agree upon this, if you see a storm coming, you're monitoring everything, and you're aware, you want to make that move, whether you plan to leave the area or go to a shelter, please plan ahead to, move out of the area and even a shelter. Don't wait. We've had this incident, I believe Hurricane Sandy was the one that really tested us, the latest one.
Oh, yeah.
We had so many people, waiting when the storm hit and to call up emergency service and said, I need to get out. So Hollye hit on it. Bryan's hit on it. If you're planning to leave, to go out to a shelter, please, think about it ahead of time, going to the shelter ahead of time so we can get you in there and get safe. Because there is a point that we as management have to make a decision of not sending our resources out in a storm. We can't do that. So by all means, if you think about that, going to a shelter, plan ahead.
How can, Bryan, back to you for a second. I wanted to flesh one thing out. How can folks get more information or find out more about this trolley system? I know you said you don't want folks to rely on that because they need to make plans in advance, but if they need to, how do they get more information about it?
Once our Emergency Operations Center would open during an event, we'll typically open 24 to 48 hours ahead of the event, depending on the size of the event that's forecasted. At that point in time, they could call our Emergency Operations Center at 757-336-3155 and, ask questions as to, are we evacuating? I can't evacuate. I need help. Mm-hmm. We would also encourage those folks that have some sort of special or functional needs that may need assistance during the event to contact that number early as well so that we can help. Because like Sea Ray was saying, there is a point in time where we won't be able to help. Our emergency operations plan states that anytime the winds go to a sustained or greater of 50 mile per hour, we will not go on the street. Wow. Police won't go, fire won't go. So once those winds reach 50 mile per hour sustained, we won't go on the street because it's not safe to send our folks out there.
Wow.
We real quick note also that Hollye does something I know we all do, some notification. We have in Accomack County the Code Red system. Mm-hmm. You can get information on that by visiting the Department of Public Safety website, www.acdps website under emergency management. It allows you to notify, so that's a code red notification system that we do. And also on that website, it provides you information about shelters and preparation tips and so forth.
We also have an emergency alert system. It's provided through Everbridge. It is available on our website, northampton-ems.org. And there's also emergency preparedness information up there, same as what Sea Ray said for Accomack.
Cool.
And for Chincoteague as well, folks could go to www.chincoteague-va.gov, and we use the Code Red on-solve system. They can sign up right from our webpage. They can put phone numbers, both their cell phones as well as their home phone, if they choose, to get notifications from us.
Cool. All right, so say folks are going to go ahead and decide to evacuate and head to a shelter. What are the things they need to make sure they have with them? What are the things they can bring? What are the things they can't bring?
Well, number one, if you plan to go to a shelter, obviously take some bed linen. Medication's a big thing. Plan on several days. Some people take obviously some food and so forth. Our shelters do not allow pets, but so please make arrangements for your pets. No pets. Right. Okay. The most important thing is plan for 3 or 4 days of being in a shelter, whether it be your medicine or food or your bed linen and so forth, or if you're taking your children their medication and anything else.
Games and such for kids to keep them occupied.
Yeah.
Want to keep them entertained.
The shelter can be quite hectic and loud, and so it's really being self-sustained for 3 days just by going to a shelter. We have no provisions there, so it's up to the family or the people to provide for themselves during that time.
And food too, and water.
Typically not food and water. I mean, we're the residents, families should be providing that.
Yeah.
It's a difficult time, so access to services is very limited with the storm going on.
And if emergency management asks you to leave, the best thing to do is to get out of the area.
Yeah. Now you're talking about evacuating your house, right?
That's right.
Like get out of the shelter.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. If you're asked to evacuate, the best thing to do is, if you have family members that are going to be out of the impact zone, is to go to those folks.
Right.
Another thing to do too would be if there are several families that are scattered throughout the shore. It would be a good idea to have a family contact way outside of the area, even on the West Coast, that you could text or call, because it may be easier to get a hold of those folks than your family members here, and that way you could stay in touch to at least let other family members know that, hey, I'm safe, we're okay, because you may not have local access, but you may be able to reach a family member, middle of the country or on the West Coast.
Interesting. Never had thought about that. A little bit about, if the power goes out. What are the recommendations for folks to prepare for a power outage? What are the recommendations for what folks should do once the power does go out?
Well, I'm glad you brought it up. I was thinking, a couple of things. By all means, we're emergency management. What makes emergency management work is all of the entities coming together: fire, EMS, law enforcement, A&N, VDOT, and so forth. And we all are out down the street working hard to get things back to normal life. So just remember that when the storm is ongoing, to stay off the road and so forth. But when it comes to power outages, think about putting water in your bathtub, to use that for your toilet and so forth. Generators, a lot of people have generators now. Some people have generators that automatically come on for their house, which is great, but some people do not. So remember that if you have a generator, you need to have a fuel supply, but also don't put your generator in the garage and shut the garage door. We've been very fortunate on the Eastern Shore, but there has been incidents that individuals have started their generator and stuck it in the garage, and then several days later they've all passed away due to carbon monoxide poisoning. So, please think about generator safety, refuel and so forth. And also A&N, I'll put this in there for A&N. Please be aware that in the moment you hook that generator up and hook it up to your house, be very cautious about backfeeding into the power lines.
Right.
So generator safety is a big thing. By all means, if you have, I think it's a great thing, but heed the precautions of generators.
What about if folks don't have generators? What can they do? Candles, flashlights?
Well, candles, flashlights. We're most of our fire providers in here. Think about the candles.
I would stay away from any open flame if I could. There's enough.
Bryan Rush is a Yankee candle guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Smell lovely.
Yeah. If I'm going to be miserable with no air conditioning, I want to smell good. But certainly stay away from the candles. Try to go with your battery-operated lanterns, flashlights, things of that nature, to avoid the potential of it getting knocked over, inadvertently, and then starting a fire, because then our problems will be even greater at that point. Also want to put a plug in for A&N. They're always on Chincoteague during an event. Their supervisors as well as their field personnel are there and ready to respond. But again, be patient with them because, again, they can't put their folks out there when winds are, getting above that 50-mile-per-hour sustain. And I've seen them work in some pretty significant gusts. And like I said, that's why I want to put a plug in for them because they go above and beyond to get our power back on as quickly as possible.
Yeah, they do a great job, and we certainly have to tip our hat to them because I wouldn't want to get up in a cherry picker and 40-mile-an-hour winds or something like that.
Not at all.
Bryan touched on battery-powered flashlights, battery-powered radio, so that you can keep in touch. And
you should keep it on WESR.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Absolutely. I mean,
I agree.
That's our go-to media for putting out public service announcements and such. So a battery-operated radio so that you can know what's going on around you and know what services are available or not available.
All right. Now, we had already talked a little bit about pets and things like that, so I just want to make sure everyone remembers that the shelters do not accept pets. What do you guys recommend for folks who have pets and they got to take them with them? They can't leave them behind.
Well, we do recommend that. First thing, we know that shelters, our shelters do not allow pets, but obviously if you can leave there and take your pets with you, there are accommodations made in the county that in the event you do need some accommodations made for your pets. You can go online and look at the information we have at the Accomack County website. But I think the biggest thing is, as a pet owner myself, please don't forget about your pets. And we think about hurricanes and wind events and rain events, but, just think about back in January we had that snow, think about your pets that are outside or, please heed to taking care of them. Even if they need medication also they're a family member. So if you need more information about pet shelters and so forth, that is on our county website, or you can call the county office at 757-789-3610.
Mm-hmm. Anything else about pets? You think C-Ray touched it all?
I think C-Ray pretty well covered it all. But again, when we think about enough water and food for 3 to 5 days, include your pet in that water count as well. How much does your pet normally drink, and make sure that you have enough for your pet as well.
What would y'all say about general tips to get your house ready to make it as safe as possible with a storm approaching? What do folks need to be doing? What do they need to be paying attention to? What do they need to be looking at?
I think cleaning up the yards is the big thing. You're going to have a lot of wind with a storm, so any objects that can be put away that won't become flying objects during the middle of the storm. Boarding up windows if you're able to. Those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ollie's right. Low-lying areas, some people actually look at putting sandbags, around their doors so we keep the water out. But I think the biggest thing we see, or the biggest thing is there's flying objects. The wind picks up, things start flying. So you have people at home, or sheltering, hunkering in place, we call it, and something flies through a window and so forth. So, please, think about those items right to this time of year. Everybody's got their pool furniture out, or their lawn furniture out, or grills, that's a flying object, to, secure them, put them in the garage and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Bryan, is it any different on Chincoteague?
It's no different on Chincoteague. Of course, we definitely have to be concerned about flooding where other areas may not. So anything that will get up and float away. People don't think about fuel tanks. I know all of our major suppliers of propane now and oil on the island have their tanks fixed well to the ground because we've had a new ordinance that was passed back in about 2011, which helped us during Sandy. But even if you have larger propane tanks that you use for a grill or something, anything sitting on the ground that maybe the wind couldn't pick up, the water will, and it'll move it and could cause significant damage not only to your property but also your neighbor's property.
I think also being prepared for the power to go off, power surges, maybe turn the power off to your house prior to all that occurring to save your appliances and such. Also with gas connections and water connections, beware of those with potential flooding and such, and making sure that how to shut those types of services off should there become a problem.
And we're talking about preparation and shelter. That just came to my mind. Think about what we're going to do after the storm passes. Think about areas that you haven't had power, you had trees down. Be very cautious out here grabbing trees that have power lines in them. Yeah. By all means, let the professionals handle that, the electric, A&M Electric or VDOT. And the next thing is we have areas flowing with a lot of water laying everywhere. Sometimes it's full of debris. We had issues during Hurricane Sandy in the Sanford Sassy area that we could not get to places just because just the debris floating in the roadway. So, Also, be careful walking through that water, but also think about our wells. Most of the people on the Eastern Shore, use rural wells. And with that, if we have significant flooding, before you start drinking that water, you need to get that checked. And you can get that information from the health department.
Is there anything else along that line that people need to be thinking about as they return home following an evacuation to a shelter out of the area following a storm? What do folks need to be paying attention to when they do that?
Well, certainly, if you've been out of the area and you come home, food in the refrigerator would be a main concern. Once you get your power back on, don't consume things that have been in there that potentially without power. It'd be a good idea to just throw it all away. Yes, food is expensive. However, it's going to be a lot cheaper than maybe a hospital stay because you've gotten salmonella, botulism, something like that. So certainly that's a thought process. As you go ahead and turn your propane or your fuel oil back on for heaters or for cooking, you want to make sure that you don't have any leaks, that something during the storm didn't fall on the line or something didn't float into your gas line and cause it to leak. You want to be very mindful of your home. Look at your roof, see what kind of damage is done to the roof. But again, what we stress most of all is it's going to take time. So if you're at home, you didn't leave the area, you can't expect us or our people to be out there in the first, 10 minutes of sunlight, because again, most of what we're talking about now, the preparation happens while it's beautiful out here on the shore, beautiful sunny day, or when you return home, usually the sun's out. Nothing but damage is all you see left from a storm. There's no more rain or clouds. So again, give us time, be patient with us, heed what we're trying to tell you. One other thing I wanted to add, on Chincoteague, we have a problem when the tide does rise that folks like to get out and ride around. And, while that's all and good, it can be exciting if you've never seen it before. It can be very dangerous, not only to you, but think of the homes that are near the flooding area that may be, 6-8 inches from the flooding actually coming in their home. As you ride by, it's no different than a boat that creates a wake. And that 6 or 8 inches could be made by that wake. And now these folks that may not have had water in their homes now have it. So when the floodwaters rise, just stay out of the floodwaters.
Yeah. Didn't think about that, but you're right.
And also, about everything is good. We've been very fortunate for a long time that we've never had really a large-scale evacuation. But something to think about, and just brought to my mind different places like Lumberton, North Carolina, where they had their incident several years ago. If we had that large scale, we may have areas that we can't let residents back due to damaged homes and so forth. And obviously, with WSR and Co-RID and different Everbridge systems, we would notify the public, this area here, we can't allow people back in the area. So if Bryan hit it right on the head, please be patient with emergency management officials by assessing damage and so forth.
All right, well, we just got a phone call question, and the question is, where is the hurricane and how far away is it? So we should add a disclaimer. There is no hurricane.
We would be sitting here. We've been at work.
They got pretty busy at this point.
Yeah, there is no hurricane. This is all general information, trying to let people know what they need to be thinking about as we head into hurricane season. But I certainly appreciate the listener and the call. I got 2 more questions. What is the biggest mistake that's made on average? And I mean the most common mistake made on average by, residents that you've seen, so people can know and be thinking about not making it when the next storm does come, which is not coming right now.
I think, I may be wrong, I think I can think for all 3 sitting here that preparation is the biggest thing of all. Please think, listen, monitor the weather. Even though we've been lucky for a long time, monitor it, plan for the worst. Go to the store. Don't wait the day before the storm gets to go to the store. Okay, Go in time, get those items, get them in there, prepare for the worst, be able to, if emergency management says you need to evacuate, you can go. I believe that's my biggest one.
I think there's enough information out there to start preparing now. Don't wait till there's a storm approaching or on the radar. Go ahead and start collecting some of those supplies because, once they announce there's a storm, all the shelves go bare.
All right.
So that's not a good time for anybody.
Someone's been trying to get us to start, this is not for hurricanes, but for snowstorms, have the bread and milk report. You can tell by the severity of the storm by how much bread and milk is left on the shelf at the grocery store. Maybe we can get Bruce Matthews to sponsor that heading forward. And is there just anything at all today that you guys want to touch on again, or anything that I didn't think to ask that people need to know as we head into hurricane season? Go ahead, Bryan.
Well, not focusing strictly on hurricanes here, but year-round preparedness. We had a big snowstorm this year. We could have tornadoes, severe thunderstorms. So we could have smaller scale events with very similarity to hurricanes where your community could be without power for days. So again, that would be something that you would need to be prepared for. If you didn't have water stored or if you didn't have some non-perishable foods, your road could be closed for a couple of days if VDOT can't get the trees out, just dependent. We are prone to hurricanes, certainly, but not only that, but tornadoes and severe thunderstorms that could do the same thing, but maybe on a smaller scale.
I echo Bryan. During the snowstorm we had in January, we had instances that VDOT worked very hard. I'll commend them. Worked very hard to get roadways clear, so did A&N, but we had areas on the shore that we were unable to get to unless we had a front-end loader. So, if you live in those areas, please prepare, be aware, pay attention to the weather. That's it.
Yeah, because like you said, a lot of people have said, it's not enough that you're stuck. The emergency personnel could get stuck trying to get to you.
Yes,
So
that's correct.
Know your sources for information. Use of the radio with WSR and other radio stations around. We try to blanket it, getting all the information out. Social media has become big as far as getting information. We have Northampton County has a Facebook page, Northampton County EMS. Our website, we try to keep updated information on that, on the public service announcements that are going out. So know where to go for information that could be really important during a storm.
all right, gang. Well, I won't take up any more of your time today. You've been listening to C. Ray Pruitt from Accomack County Emergency Management, Bryan Rush from Chincoteague Emergency Management, Hollye Carpenter with Northampton Emergency Management. And again, there is no storm on the way. This is just a general overview on what you need to do to get prepared and general information about storm safety as we head into hurricane season. Just want to say thank you guys very much for taking your time out of your busy schedule and being with us today. All right, time now, 1:04. The Breasters back in next.
Thank you for listening to Shore Talk. This interview has been recorded and is available on WESR's YouTube page. To schedule a Shore Talk for your community event or organization, call us at 757-787-3200 or email Nancy at WESR.net.